what I guess is like good and bad outside of intuition. Um, Word on the street is that you are a moral realist.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm slightly confused by that. So I guess my a big question, right? But my question would just be, how can I guess it's a two-part question. Is that I guess number one, in order to be a moral realist, does morality need to be mind independent? And then part two would be, if it does need to be mind independent, how what's like the argument for morality being mind independent?
Yeah, well, I think that mind independence is a bad way of thinking about it. Really, it's sort of belief independent. So the moral realist thinks that there are things that are right or wrong, independent of our attitudes towards them. But the things that are right or wrong may still be a fact about our minds. So, for example, if one is a moral realist, they'll think that, if you're a moral realist utilitarian, you'll think that pleasure is good and pain is bad. And this is a fact about mental states. Pleasure and pain are mental states, but the thing that makes it true is not anyone's attitude towards it. It would remain true even if nobody thought that it was true. The reasons to think this is that denying this has sort of very unintuitive implications. So, for example, moral realism, concisely stated, is the idea that there are some moral sentences, some moral statements that are true independent of people's attitudes towards them. Uh, and so, if you deny this, then you have to deny that statements of the like it's wrong to torture infants for fun and would be so even if everyone approved of it. You have to deny that that's true, and that seems any argument for moral anti-realism is going to be less persuasive than the principle that it's wrong to torture infants for fun and would be so even if everyone approved of it. And the more specific forms of anti-realism inherit more specific problems. So, in order to deny that moral sentences are true independent of people's attitudes, you have to think that one of the following three things is true with our moral statements. Either with a statement like it's wrong to torture people, either A, it's false, and so that's error theory. B, it's true, but it's made true by our attitudes towards it, which is subjectivism or some kind of relativism. And C, it's neither true nor false. So the statement "murder is wrong" is something like the statement like "boo murder" or "don't commit murder," which is a command, and commands can't be true or false. But each of these has its own problems. So first, for non-cognitivism, well, non-cognitivism it uh, it runs into the issue that it is not a good account of moral talk. So there are various things that can seemingly be done with moral talk. So it seems like you can ask questions about morality. So you can say, is this right or wrong? You can't ask questions about things that are non-propositional, about things that don't have a truth value. You can't say, I wonder if shut the door, or I wonder if go Dodgers. And so and then you can also have sophisticated chains of arguments with non-cognitivism. So, for example, you can have, or with propositions. So, for example, you can have an argument of the form, murder is wrong. If murder is wrong, it would be wrong for me to kill Jane. Therefore, it's wrong to kill Jane. But you can't do that if moral sentences are not propositional, because you can't say if boo murder, then boo Jane murder. Given that if required, like when you're saying if X is the case and Y is the case, there's something that has to be the case. And if it's just non-propositional, then if statements don't make any sense because you're not talking about anything being the case. It seems like you can sort of hope for moral statements to be true. So you can say, I hope that murder is right, or I hope that abortion is permissible. You can't say, I hope that go Dodgers. That doesn't make any sense. And so I think non-cognitivism is out, and there are more sophisticated versions of non-cognitivism, but I think that they inherit similar problems. Then there's subjectivism, or then there's error theory, which says all moral sentences are false. But that has the problem that it implies that it's not wrong to torture people, and so that's out because it is wrong to torture people, and that's more obvious than any argument for error theory. And then finally, there's subjectivism, which says that it depends on our attitudes. But that runs into the problem that, well, it doesn't seem like our attitudes are what makes torturing people wrong. If we approved of torturing people, it would remain wrong. And so I think just any version of anti-realism is going to inherit problems. And then there are more specific problems. So The following things seem plausible. One of them is that if there are reasons to care about things independent of what we in fact care about, then some things are objectively worth pursuing, and then there are things that are worth caring about independent of what we actually care about. So some things are objectively worth pursuing. If things are objectively worth pursuing, then morality is objective. Well, all the premises except premise two are kind of obvious. If there are things that are worth caring about, even if you don't actually care about them, then uh, there are things that are objectively worth caring about, and then you can get objective morality from that. Well, so why think that there are things that you have reasons to care about, even if you don't actually care about them? Well, it's really obvious. So, here are a few examples. It seems like, imagine a person who's someone gave this example, I can't remember who's a consistent anorexic. So this person has a really strong desire to be thin. Their desire to be thin is so strong that she starves herself to death because she really wants to be thin. Seems like she's irrational, even though she's acting in accordance with her desires. Similarly, if a person sets themselves on fire or eats a car or spends their life picking grass, despite these activities producing no enjoyment for any of them, for them at all, then that seems irrational, even if they're acting in accordance with their desires. And so the idea is that there are clear cases of irrational desires, which shows that some things are genuinely not worth caring about, even if people in fact care about them. And then there are other things that are actually worth caring about. So if you don't care about them, you're being irrational, which requires that things are objectively worth caring about, and from there you can get moral realism.
Gotcha. I think I have a pretty similar view, though I call myself a moral anti-realist. So maybe I'm a little just confused about the definition. So, right, I've always seen it as something that's like, in order to be a moral realist, you'd have to say that something would be um, mind independent. So I guess I can give an example. It's like you gave the that torturing a child is wrong. Well, it seems to me that like, yeah, a moral fact sort of exists within the world, because we all sort of have this desire for well-being. I guess like an ultimate desire for well-being. So we may desire to eat ice cream all day, right? And that may go along that may conflict with our ultimate desire for well-being, because it may increase bad health outcomes and things like that. Um, but basically, yeah, the main goal is ultimate well-being, and we may be wrong about what we think brings about that. But there are certain things that we kind of know bring about well-being that we can kind of reason from. Um, but I see it sort of as, I guess, like color, right? Like the color red, like I guess it objectively exists, right? Um, as far as like our experience goes, like red. Um, but take away our perception of red, and the red no longer exists. And that's kind of how I see morality. Um, a hurricane is bad, right? But it's not bad if nobody's there to experience it.
Yeah, well,
Um,
there are two things that have to be distinguished. Well, so um, one of them is that things can't. So I would agree that things can't be bad if there are no experiencers, because I think that the only things that are substantively bad are things that affect, the well-being of conscious creatures in particular ways. So
yeah,
if you think that that, for example, so I think that if a hurricane doesn't affect anyone, it can't be bad. That's a substantive claim about the moral facts. The idea of moral realism is that it doesn't depend on our attitudes. So it may depend on the effect that it has on conscious creatures. But the thing that makes a hurricane bad is not that but a hurricane's bad, and it's not bad because anyone thinks it's bad. And so I think if you accept that, then so it's not because we have a yeah, so it's not because we think hurricanes are bad that they're bad. It's because they're actually bad. Now, you seem to suggest that well-being is good because we all desire it. Well, do you think that it's true that we ought to produce well-being because we all desire it? And do you think that that is true because we have, because we have certain desires relating to it. Like you can, even if you think that pleasure is by definition desire, which I don't, and I'll explain why in a moment. But the question is the thing that makes pleasure valuable, is it something about our attitudes towards it, or is it something independent of our attitudes towards it? And note, when I say it, I'm not talking about towards pleasure. I'm talking about our attitudes towards the fact that pleasure is desirable. So does the thing that makes pleasure desirable, is that the fact that we think pleasure is desirable? That we think that it's true or something? Or is it that it's just one should bring about things that people desire?
Gotcha. It's sort of like, is it good because we desire it, or do we desire it because it's good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. One thing that
Well, no, it's
makes
wait,
me
sorry, it's not. It's actually not that, right? So,
okay.
like, so you can think that pleasure is bad. That you might be a moral realist and a desire theorist. So you think that the only thing that's objectively good is people getting what they want, but people getting what they want is objectively good. The question, it's not about whether what makes things bad. It's not about like whether the reason why me stabbing myself in the arm is bad is because I desire not to be stabbed in the arm. It's about whether the reason that it's true that me being stabbed in the arm is bad is because of some beliefs that we have about being stabbed in the arm. So if, for example, you think that the only reason it's bad to be stabbed in the arm is because if you have a view according to which the only reason that it's bad for people to be stabbed in the arm is because some set of humans has the belief that it's bad to be stabbed in the arm, then that would be a type of anti-realism. If the truth that something is bad depends on people's attitudes towards it, then or their beliefs about it, then you get the result. Then that's a type of subjectivism, and is